So it's finally here, the new software update for the Sony BURANO. Let's dive deep into why the 2.0 software matters so much. So when this little fella, the Sony BURANO, was first announced, it generated a lot of curiosity. A full-frame internal ND lightweight cinema camera with built-in stabilization, it sounded like a dream. But for those of us who actually picked it up and used it, it quickly became clear that it was missing a few things, and things that made everyday work a bit harder than it should have been. I bought the BURANO knowing that Firmware 2.0 was coming. That's the version I was waiting for, because honestly, without it the camera felt unfinished. It showed so much potential, but didn't feel ready in some places. Now it's here, and with it Sony fixed most of what I was missing. Practical slow motion, a proper anamorphic mode, clean overlays, metadata and smarter menus. No, it doesn't turn the BURANO in a completely different camera, but it finally feels like what it was supposed to be from the start, a production-ready tool you can trust. Let's start with things that matter most on set, what comes out of the camera. 120 frames in full frame crop. And to do it with a single button. That's right, no more digging through menus, changing sensor readout mode and hoping everything still works. This is fixed. You just press one S&Q button, just like on the FX3 or FX6, and you're instantly in slow motion. In fast-paced environments, and especially in documentary or branded work, you don't always have the luxury of stopping and reconfiguring everything just to grab a slow motion shot. Now it's built into your muscle memory, and that's very nice. The next one was long overdue. The BURANO now supports a proper 4:3 mode in Super 35 recorded in XOCN up to 60 frames per second. It's a big step forward for you working with traditional 2x anamorphic lenses. But let's be honest, it's still not perfect. Sony only added a 1.8D squeeze option, and while that's nice, it still leaves out many lenses. Most notably 1.6 anamorphics, of course I own these, and they aren't represented at all. I've talked about this in a separate video because I find it frustrating. I just want to use the lens I already own and see the correct image out of the viewfinder, and yeah, unfortunately that's still not possible, but for most of us it should work fine. Something else I've been thinking about: when you shoot in full frame 8.6K, you actually get more vertical resolution than in 4:3. So depending on your workflow, the full frame mode might give you better image quality overall, especially with full frame anamorphic lenses. But yeah, don't trust me on that. If you know it better, write it in the comments below. So that said, using 4:3 saves time in post, so it really comes down to what you value more, resolution or simplicity. The next one is a bit more niche, but good to have. You can now record up to 240 frames per second in Super 35, though it's limited to 1.9K, so full HD resolution and only available in XAVC. Also important, you lose HDMI and SDI output in this mode. For me, this isn't something I use every day, but if you plan your shoot well and light it properly, it can absolutely hold up. Just don't expect the same flexibility as with XOCN. Active IS is now available in full frame, crop and Super 35. So it's the same system we know from the FX3, and I've grown to love it there, especially when shooting handheld, trying to get tripod-like shots or working longer lenses. Sometimes it introduces some subtle artifacts, but most of the time it's a huge help. It's one of those tools I didn't think I needed until I had it, and I'm genuinely happy it's now part of the BURANO's toolkit. Sony says autofocus has been improved at certain frame rates, so I don't know. Personally, I always found the autofocus to be quite reliable on the BURANO, but if they've made it even better, I'm all for it. Before we dive deep into metadata and overlays, quick question. How often do you add motion graphics to your videos? I do it pretty regularly, and for that I use Motion Array. It's basically my go-to source for clean, customizable motion graphics that save me time and make my edits look polished. The library is packed with drag-and-drop graphics, animated arrows, lower thirds, call-outs, emojis, you name it. And they just work. Transparent backgrounds, sorted by software, searchable by category. And One of the best parts, I don't need to open After Effects or deal with alpha channels. I can just drop them straight into the timeline and go. I've used several in this video, just quick effective tools to speed things up and keep the focus on the content. If you want to give it a try, check the link in the description. I've added a discount that gives you 2 extra months free on annual plan. So if you're looking for a quick way to make your edit smoother, faster and just a bit more fun, definitely check out Motion. Let's talk about how the camera communicates with you and your crew. This is one of those small things that has a big impact. In version 1, the overlays were cluttered and hard to manage. Now they sit outside the image area. It's a much cleaner look and something that really helps when pulling focus or operating handheld and looking into the viewfinder. It might seem like a UI fix, but it's one of the most noticeable improvements in day-to-day use because you look at it every day and all the time. Software 2.0 adds metadata for breathing compensation and stabilization recorded straight into the XOCN files. That's super useful if you're doing any VFX, lens correction or match moving in post. So the SDI outputs are now also include clip name and the timecode. Again, small thing, big deal, especially in multicam setups or when syncing audio, or the script supervisor will just want to have the timecode and the clip name on their monitor. So that helps a lot. You can now format cards and set your cam ID and reel number directly from the status screen. No more going deep into the menus just to start your shoot properly. And I do this every single morning, and this change alone probably saves me a minute or two every day, plus fewer chances to make a mistake. And this is one of those very small features that just excite me the most. If you're using the optional grip and PL lenses, this one's important. The Burano now supports 24-volt lens power through the grip. That means you can power cine lenses that require external voltage without extra accessories or cables. More tidy, more integrated and more professional. Unfortunately, I've not been able to try this out, but you have to trust Sony on that. In the previous firmware, hitting record would sometimes kill your video signal and external monitors, and all the outputs were quite cluttered. If you wanted the overlays, you had to use the HDMI, and the SDI wouldn't function. It was just a nightmare. You needed like a chart where all the outputs would be mapped out to remember them. So it's not ideal on a client shoot, and that's now fixed. SDI and HDMI outputs are stable and consistent, your director's monitor stays alive, your client sees what you're filming, and you don't waste time troubleshooting. So that's huge, but that was expected when I bought this because it was just such a nightmare that, yeah, Software 2.0 was always there to fix this. Firmware 2.0 doesn't reinvent the Sony Burano, but it finally completes it. So most of the updates are small on paper, but in practice they fix real issues. They save time, they reduce friction, and they make the camera a better partner on set. For me, this version of the Burano is what I was hoping for when I first placed my order. If you already own the camera, this update is a no-brainer, of course, and if you were on the fence, this might be the version that finally makes it work for you. So thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, feel free to subscribe, and yeah, I see you in the next one.